The first woman came dressed like a bride. White silk, diamond necklace, hair pinned with pearls. She walked across the sunlit rooftop terrace as if the entire city had been built only to watch her arrive. Behind her, Manhattan glittered under the afternoon sky. Glass towers caught the sunlight. White roses climbed the golden railings. A string quartet played softly near the marble fountain, though no one was truly listening. Every guest on that rooftop was waiting for one thing. Silvio. Moretti's decision. He sat at the center table in a black suit, one hand resting beside an untouched glass of water, his face unreadable. He was 38 years old, rich enough to buy hotels, powerful enough to make judges answer private calls, dangerous enough that men lowered their voices when his name entered a room. And today, against his will, he was supposed to choose a wife, not for love, not for happiness, for peace. His father had died 6 months earlier, and the city had been watching him ever since, waiting to see if the Moretti empire would weaken. Old enemies had begun smiling too much. Business partners had started delaying signatures. Rival families had sent gifts that felt more like warnings. So his mother had arranged the selection. Caterina Moretti believed old families understood one language better than loyalty: marriage. A public engagement would calm the city, silence rumors, and remind every enemy that Silvio Moretti stood at the center of a powerful alliance. Silvio believed the entire afternoon was a waste of sunlight. The woman in white stopped in front of him and lowered her eyes. "My daughter Isabella," her father announced proudly, "has been prepared for this life since childhood. She speaks 4 languages, hosts charity events, and understands the dignity required beside a man of your position." Isabella smiled. It was perfect. Too perfect. Silvio looked at her for 3 seconds. No. The music seemed to stumble. Isabella's smile froze. Her father blinked as if he had misheard. Caterina Moretti, seated beside her son in ivory silk, did not react. She only tapped one finger against the handle of her cane. The second woman came in a red dress. She was tall, elegant, and famous enough that several people turned to whisper her name. She had the confident beauty of a woman used to being photographed from flattering angles. She laughed softly before speaking, as if she and Silvio were already sharing an intimate joke. "I have always admired powerful men," she said. Silvio did not blink. No. The third woman had golden hair and a voice like honey. No. The fourth brought him a gift wrapped in black velvet. No. The fifth spoke about loyalty while glancing twice at the cameras. No. By the time the 7th woman stepped forward, the rooftop had gone tense. Fathers stopped smiling. Mothers tightened their hands around champagne flutes. The young women waiting in line began to look less confident and more afraid. Silvio Moretti had rejected every beautiful woman placed in front of him. Not rudely. Not loudly. That would have been easier to forgive. He rejected them quietly, with the calm certainty of a man dismissing counterfeit bills. Then Helena Whitmore stepped forward. The rooftop changed. Even the women who hated her looked at her. Helena had that effect. She wore pale blue satin that made her blonde hair look brighter and her skin look flawless. She was not merely beautiful. She was designed. Every curl, every step, every tilt of her chin had been chosen with intention. At 33, Helena Whitmore was what society called a prize. Old money name, perfect manners, charity committee, magazine features, ballet posture, a smile that could appear warm without giving away anything real. Beside the doorway, half hidden behind one of the rose-wrapped columns, her younger sister held a stack of folders against her chest and tried not to be seen. Clara Whitmore had learned invisibility early. She was not ugly. That would have been easier. People had a category for ugly. They could pity it, mock it, dismiss it. Clara was worse than ugly in her mother's world. She was forgettable, soft brown curls that never stayed pinned. Gentle brown eyes that looked down too quickly, a plain cream dress chosen because it did not wrinkle. sensible shoes because she had been told they would only be there for an hour, a beige cardigan because hotel rooftops were often windy, and her father had always said she caught cold too easily. She had not come to be chosen. She had come to carry Helena's emergency makeup, her mother's medication, and the legal papers Helena had forgotten in the car. That was Clara's role in the Whitmore family. Remember what everyone else forgot. Fix what everyone else broke. Stand close enough to be useful but far enough not to embarrass anyone. Her mother, Eleanor Whitmore, stepped beside Helena with a smile that had been practiced for society pages. "Mr. Moretti," Eleanor said, "my daughter Helena understands tradition, family, and discretion. She was raised for a life like this." Silvio looked at Helena. Helena smiled. Clara watched from the column, holding her breath without meaning to. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Silvio's gaze shifted. Past Helena, past Eleanor, past the line of beautiful women, to Clara. She felt it like sunlight suddenly turning into fire. His eyes found her in the shade, dark, sharp, still. Clara immediately looked down. A ridiculous instinct, but she could not stop it. She had spent too many years lowering her eyes when attention came too close. Silvio leaned back slightly. "Who is that?" The question cut through the terrace. Eleanor's smile faltered. Helena turned her head slowly, as if she already knew. Clara's fingers tightened around the folders. "My younger daughter," Eleanor said with a small laugh. "Clara, she is only here to help." Only. The word landed exactly where Eleanor intended. Clara remained still. Silvio watched her. "To help with what?" Eleanor blinked. "Papers. Small things. Clara is very good with small things." A few women near the line smiled behind their glasses. Helena's expression did not change, but Clara saw the warning in her sister's eyes. "Do not make this worse." Silvio stood. The rooftop went silent. He was taller than Clara had expected. Not just tall, but commanding, as if the air rearranged itself around him. His black suit made every pastel dress around him look temporary. "Bring her here," he said. Helena's smile stiffened. "Mr. Moretti, Clara is not part of the selection." "I know." "Then why?" "Because I asked for her." No one moved. Eleanor turned, her eyes sharp now. "Clara, darling, come here." "Darling." Clara almost laughed. Her mother only called her darling in public. She stepped away from the column. The walk across the rooftop felt endless. She could feel every eye measuring her. Her dress was too simple. Her shoes were wrong. Her cardigan made her look like someone's assistant. Beside Helena, she looked unfinished. A woman whispered, not quietly enough, "Is that really her sister?" Another murmured, "Poor thing." Clara kept walking. She stopped beside Helena and lowered her chin. Up close, Silvio saw what the others did not. Clara was trembling. Not dramatically, not for attention. Just enough that the folders in her arms moved slightly against her chest. But her eyes were clear. Tired, yes. Wounded, yes. But clear. "What are you holding?" Silvio asked. "Documents," Clara said softly. "Whose?" "My sister's." Helena gave a light laugh. "Clara keeps everything organized. She enjoys that sort of thing." Clara said nothing. Silvio looked at Helena. "Does she?" Helena blinked. "Excuse me?" "Enjoy it. It is just her nature." Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. Her nature. As if she had been born to carry other people's lives. Silvio looked back at Clara. "Do you enjoy it?" No one had ever asked her that before. Not directly. Not as though the answer mattered. Clara's mouth opened, then closed. Eleanor's voice came quickly. "Clara is shy. She gets overwhelmed when put on the spot." Silvio's eyes did not leave Clara. "I did not ask your mother." The rooftop sharpened around them. Clara swallowed. "No, she said. It was barely louder than the fountain. But everyone heard it. Helena turned toward her. Clara. One word, a warning. Clara's hands tightened around the folders. Silvio noticed. What do you enjoy? He asked. Clara looked confused, as if pleasure were a language she had forgotten. I read, she said finally. What? Letters, old journals, legal documents, anything people leave behind when they think no one will care anymore. Caterina Moretti's eyebrow lifted. Silvio's attention deepened. And, what have people left behind today? He asked. Clara's breath caught. I'm sorry? You were standing in the shade for nearly an hour. You were not speaking. That means you were listening. Eleanor laughed too brightly. Mr. Moretti, Clara has a habit of noticing things that are not her concern. Useful people often do. Clara looked up despite herself. Silvio's face had not softened, but something in his voice had changed. Not kindness exactly. Recognition. He asked again, What did you notice? Clara felt Helena's anger beside her like heat from a stove. She should say nothing. That was the safest answer. Nothing. I noticed nothing. But Silvio Moretti had rejected 7 perfect women because he sensed performance. If Clara lied now, he would know. So she told the truth. I noticed the woman in white did not understand the Italian blessing your mother gave her. She nodded at the wrong time. A rustle moved across the terrace. Caterina's mouth twitched. Clara continued before fear could stop her. The woman in red said she admired powerful men, but her hand shook when your guard walked behind her. The blonde woman with the emerald bracelet smiled at you, but she watched the photographer more than she watched your face. Silvio's eyes did not move from hers. And Helena? Clara froze. Beside her, Helena went very still. Eleanor whispered, Clara. This time it was not a warning. It was a plea. Clara looked at her sister. Helena had been beautiful since childhood. People had loved her loudly. Teachers praised her. Relatives photographed her. Their mother corrected Clara's posture while adjusting Helena's crown. But Helena had also learned to survive in that attention. She had learned to smile when angry, charm when frightened, and perform when empty. Clara did not want to hurt her. She is very good at being seen, Clara said quietly. The words were not cruel. That made them worse. Helena's face turned pale. Silvio asked, And you? Clara looked down. I am very good at not being seen. The silence that followed was different. Not mocking, not confused. Heavy. For the first time that day, Caterina Moretti looked at Clara with full attention. Silvio's jaw tightened. Then he asked, Why? Clara gave a small, sad smile. It is easier for everyone. The answer struck something in him. He had known soldiers who gave that answer with different words. Men who lived in corners because the center had punished them. Women who disappeared inside marriages. Children who learned silence before they learned trust. He had seen invisibility before, but never dressed so gently. Before Silvio could speak, a waiter approached carrying a silver tray of lemon water. Clara saw him before anyone else paid attention. He was not one of the regular hotel staff. She knew because she had arrived early with Helena's documents and had spent 20 minutes watching staff prepare the rooftop. The real servers wore white gloves with pale blue stitching at the wrist. This man's gloves were plain. His jacket fit too tightly across the shoulders. His shoes were too polished, and his left hand never fully relaxed. Silvio reached toward the glass. Clara moved without thinking. Don't. The word came out sharp enough to cut the music. Silvio's hand stopped. Everyone looked at Clara. The waiter's eyes changed. Just a flicker. But Clara saw it. Silvio saw Clara see it. What did you say? Helena whispered. Clara could not breathe. The waiter placed the tray down slowly. too slowly. Then his right hand moved toward his jacket. Everything happened, at once. One of Silvio's guards shouted. A woman screamed. The string quartet stopped mid-note. The waiter pulled a small black pistol from inside his coat. Clara did not scream. She threw Helena's folders. The thick stack struck the waiter's wrist just as he fired. The bullet shattered the marble fountain behind Silvio, sending water and stone fragments into the air. Silvio moved like the violence had been waiting inside him. He grabbed Clara by the waist and pulled her down behind the table. His body covered hers as guards rushed forward. Another shot cracked. A chair overturned. Glass broke. Someone sobbed. Clara's cheek pressed against Silvio's chest. His arm shielded her head. For one breathless second, all she could hear was his heartbeat. Steady, unfrightened, alive. Then the attacker was on the ground, pinned under two guards, blood on his mouth, weapon kicked away. The rooftop smelled of gunpowder, roses, and spilled lemon water. Silvio looked down at Clara. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, but her voice would not come. His hand moved to her face, stopping just before touching her cheek. He did not force comfort on her. He asked with his eyes. That nearly broke her. "I'm fine," she whispered. His gaze dropped to her hand. A line of blood ran across her palm where the folder clip had cut her skin. "No," he said. "You are not." Helena stood several feet away, shaking, her blue dress dotted with fountain water. Eleanor clutched her arm. Neither of them had moved toward Clara. Clara noticed. Worse, Silvio noticed. Katerina walked forward with her cane, stepping around broken glass as calmly as if she were crossing a garden. She looked at the attacker, then at her son, then at Clara. "Well," she said, "at least one useful woman attended." No one dared laugh. Silvio rose and helped Clara stand. The moment his hand closed around hers, the entire rooftop watched. Helena's eyes dropped to their joined hands. Something in her face cracked. Not fear, jealousy. Clara tried to pull away, embarrassed, but Silvio did not let go immediately. "You saw him," he said. "I noticed the gloves. Anything else?" He wasn't carrying the tray like a waiter. He balanced it too carefully. Like he was pretending to know the weight. Luca Romano, Silvio's second in command, appeared beside them. Broad shoulders, dark suit, cold eyes. He looked from Clara to Silvio. "She's right," Luca said. "The staff badges are wrong too." Silvio's expression hardened. The attacker was dragged upright, struggling. "Who sent you?" Silvio asked. The man spat blood onto the marble. Silvio did not raise his voice. That made him more frightening. "You fired a weapon in front of my mother," he said. "You frightened guests in my house's name, and you nearly shot the only honest person here. Choose your next silence carefully." Clara felt the words enter her like warmth. The only honest person here. No one had ever called her that in a room full of Helena's admirers. The attacker laughed weakly. "You think this was about you?" Luca grabbed his collar. The man's eyes shifted. Not to Silvio. To Clara. A cold finger ran down her spine. Silvio saw the look. His whole body changed. "What does he want with her?" Silvio asked. The attacker smiled. "You should ask her family." Eleanor gasped. Helena went still. Clara turned toward them. "What does he mean?" Eleanor's face had gone white beneath her makeup. "Nothing. He is trying to cause confusion." The attacker laughed again. "The quiet one doesn't know." Silvio stepped in front of Clara, but the damage had already begun. Clara stared at her mother. "Know what?" Eleanor did not answer. Helena looked away, and for the first time, in Clara's life, the silence in her family did not feel like neglect. It felt like conspiracy. Katerina struck her cane once against the marble. "Inside," she said. "Now." The rooftop erupted into whispers as Silvio led Clara away. This time, he did not offer his arm as a performance. He walked beside her like a wall. Behind them, Eleanor called, "Clara, wait!" Clara stopped. For 31 years, that voice had turned her around. This time, she did not move. Silvio looked at her, not commanding, not rescuing, simply waiting to see what she would choose. Clara slowly turned back. Her mother stood with Helena near, the shattered fountain. The beautiful sister still looked flawless to anyone who did not know how to read her hands. But Clara knew. Helena's fingers twisted in the wet satin at her side. Eleanor forced a smile. "Come with us, darling. You are shaken. This has been too much attention for you." Too much attention. Not danger, not blood, not betrayal. Attention. Clara looked at her mother as if seeing her clearly for the first time. "I'm going inside with Mr. Moretti." Helena's head snapped up. Eleanor's smile disappeared. "Clara." There it was again, the warning inside her name. But the old power had cracked. Silvio's voice was quiet. "She gave you her answer." Eleanor's eyes flashed. "This is a family matter." "No," Katerina said from behind him. "This is a matter of attempted murder, public disgrace, and very poor parenting. That makes it everyone's business." A few guests pretended not to hear. None of them left. Scandal was stronger than fear when rich people believed the blood would not be theirs. Silvio looked down at Clara. "Come." And Clara, who had spent her life walking behind Helena, walked beside him into the hotel. The private suite smelled of polished wood, black coffee, and rain, though the day outside remained bright. Thick curtains softened the sunlight. 2 guards stood outside the door. Katerina sat near the fireplace like a queen who had decided not to execute anyone yet. A doctor cleaned Clara's hand. "It is shallow," he said. Silvio stood behind him. "Then why is she bleeding?" The doctor hesitated. "Because even shallow cuts bleed, Mr. Moretti." Katerina sighed. "Do not intimidate the man for understanding skin." Clara almost laughed. The sound surprised her so much she looked down. Silvio heard it. Something softened in his eyes. Only for a second. The doctor bandaged her palm and left quickly, clearly grateful to escape. Luca entered carrying a tablet. "The shooter's name is Adrian Vale," he said. "Former private security, no hotel employment record. His badge was forged. We traced the payment through 3 accounts, but one name keeps appearing." Silvio's gaze sharpened. "Whose?" Luca glanced at Clara. That look told her everything. Her heart sank. "Say it," she whispered. Luca turned the tablet slightly. "Whitmore." Clara stared at the name on the screen. Whitmore Holdings, her father's company, or what remained of it. "No," she said. Silvio did not speak. That helped. If he had comforted her too quickly, she might have broken. His silence let the truth stand long enough for her to face it. "My father would never—" "I do not think your father sent him," Luca said. Clara looked up. Luca swiped the screen. "Your father has been legally incapacitated for 4 years. Someone else has signing authority." Clara closed her eyes. "My mother. And your sister," Luca added. The room tilted. Clara sat down. Because her knees had stopped pretending. Helena's folders. Her mother's sudden insistence that Clara leave. The attacker looking at her. The words. The quiet one. Doesn't know. Katerina leaned forward. "Tell us about your father." Clara's fingers pressed into the edge of the sofa. "Henry Whitmore. He owned a small import company. It was successful. Once, not huge, but respectable. He had a stroke 4 years ago. Since then, Mother and Helena have handled everything. And you? I visit him, read to him, manage his medication when the nurses change shifts, make sure he has clean sweaters because he hates hospital gowns. Her voice cracked on the last sentence. Silvio looked away for a moment, as if giving her privacy inside her own pain. Katerina's voice was gentler now. Does your father speak? Sometimes. Not always clearly. He remembers old things better than new ones. What old things? Clara hesitated. Then she looked at the old leather book she had placed on the table. My grandfather's letters. Silvio's eyes moved to the book. Clara picked it up carefully. The cover was scratched from where she had thrown it earlier. She touched the damage with guilt, as if the book were alive. My grandfather served in Italy after the war. My father loves hearing his letters. He says they make him feel like his father is still in the room. Katerina's face changed. Clara noticed. What is it? The older woman did not answer immediately. May I see? Clara hugged the book closer on instinct. It was irrational. These people had saved her from gunfire. Silvio had shielded her with his body. Katerina had defended her more fiercely in 1 hour than Eleanor had in 31 years. But the book was hers. One of the few things Helena had never wanted. Silvio saw the hesitation. You do not have to, he said. Katerina shot him a look. He ignored it. Clara looked at him. No pressure, no command, just a choice. That was what undid her. She opened the book and pulled out a bundle of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. These are the Italian ones, she said. Katerina took them with hands that were suddenly careful. The room went quiet. She read the first letter, then the second. By the third, her face had gone pale. Silvio stepped forward. Mama. Katerina did not answer. By the fourth letter, her eyes were shining. Clara's stomach tightened. Mrs. Moretti? Katerina looked at her. Your grandfather saved my husband's life. Silvio went still. Luca stopped moving. Clara blinked. What? Katerina held up the letter. Antonio Moretti, Silvio's father. He was ambushed in Sicily in 1949 before he came to America. He told me once that an American pulled him from a burning car and hid him in a church cellar for 2 days. He never told me the man's name. She looked at the letter again. Thomas Whitmore. Clara's eyes filled before she understood. Why? Her quiet grandfather, the man whose handwriting had kept her company through lonely nights. The man everyone in her family called impractical because he cared more for honor than profit. He had saved a Moretti. Silvio took the letter from his mother. Clara watched his face as he read. His expression did not change much, but the room felt different around him. The letter had reached a place no one else on that terrace had touched. When he looked at Clara again, his voice was lower. Did your father know? I think so. Did your mother? Clara thought of Eleanor's white face. Yes. Luca looked at the tablet again. If these letters prove an old debt between Whitmore and Moretti, someone may be afraid of what else Thomas kept. Katerina nodded. Antonio always said, there was a ledger, names, payments, betrayals, proof of who turned on whom after the war. I thought it was buried with him. Clara frowned. A memory rose slowly. Her father in his care facility bed 2 weeks earlier, his hand gripping hers with surprising strength, his words broken but urgent. Blue spine, not Helena. You. She had thought he meant the blue ribbon around the letters, but he had said spine. A book spine. Silvio saw the memory enter her face. What did you remember? Clara swallowed. My father said something strange. The blue spine, not Helena. You. Katerina closed her eyes. Luca muttered, damn. Silvio's voice was calm, but his eyes were not. Where is the blue-spined book? At my house, Clara whispered. In my father's library. Luca was already moving toward the door. Silvio held up one hand, stopping him. Then he looked at Clara. We need to go there. Clara stood too quickly. No. Silvio waited. My mother will not allow it, she said. Helena will say I am being dramatic. They will twist everything until somehow I am the one who caused this. Katerina's mouth hardened. How long have they done that? Clara said nothing. Silvio's voice was quiet. How long? She tried to smile. It failed. Long enough that I usually believe them. No one spoke. That silence was different from the rooftop silence. No judgment, no mockery, only recognition and anger. Not Clara's anger, everyone else's. She was not used to other people being angry for her. It made her feel both protected and exposed. Silvio stepped closer, stopping far enough away that she did not feel cornered. Listen to me carefully, he said. You are not responsible for the cruelty of people who benefit from your silence. Clara looked down. The words went too deep. Do not make me brave, she whispered. I cannot make you what you already are. Her throat tightened. Before she could answer, her phone rang. Helena. The name flashed on the screen like a threat. Clara's body reacted before her mind did. Her shoulders drew in. Her breathing shortened. Her thumb moved toward decline. Silvio saw everything. Answer it, he said. She looked up, startled. On speaker. That seems unfair. So, does sending a gunman to a rooftop? Clara stared at the phone. It rang again. She accepted. Helena? Her sister's voice came sharp, polished, and furious. Where are you? I'm safe. That is not what I asked. Clara closed her eyes. Katerina leaned back, listening. Silvio stood very still. I'm at the Moretti suite, Clara said. There was silence. Then Helena laughed. It was a terrible sound. You must be enjoying this. Clara opened her eyes. Enjoying what? Being the center of everything. Watching people whisper about me. Watching him humiliate me for you. For me? Clara's voice shook. A man fired a gun. And somehow you still managed to make it your moment. Silvio's face went colder than Clara had ever seen it. Clara whispered, Helena, please. No, don't please me. Do you understand what you've done? Every woman on that rooftop saw him reject me and take your hand. Your hand, Clara. Do you know how humiliating that is? Clara's fingers tightened around the phone. There it was. Not fear for her, not relief, humiliation. Her sister had not called to ask if she was hurt. She had called because Clara had been seen. I didn't ask him to choose me, Clara said. No, you just stood there looking wounded and harmless until he felt sorry for you. Katerina's cane tapped once against the floor. Helena continued, voice dropping into something more intimate and cruel. You are not made for his world. You are not made for any world where people look too closely. Come home. Apologize to Mother. Tell the Morettis you were overwhelmed. Tell them you misunderstood. Whatever you think you heard. Clara looked at Silvio. He did not speak. He did not rescue her. He let the moment belong to her. For once, someone believed she could answer. Clara inhaled slowly. No. The word was small. But it changed the room. Helena went silent. What did you say? Clara's hand trembled, but she did not lower the phone. I said no. I am coming home, but not to apologize. I need Father's blue-spined book from the library. On the other end, Helena stopped breathing. It was only a second, but Clara heard it. So did Silvio. When Helena spoke again, her voice was different, too controlled. What book? Clara closed her eyes. Now she knew. Her sister had lied many times in her life. Small lies, pretty lies, necessary lies. This one had fear inside it. The one Father told me about, Clara said. Helena's voice sharpened. Father says many things, His mind is broken. Clara flinched. Silvio's hand curled at his side. For the first time, Clara did not let the pain turn into obedience. His body is weak, she said. His mind is still his. Do not talk to me like that. Then stop talking about him like he is already dead. The room went completely still. Even Katerina looked surprised. Helena's breathing shook. You think because a dangerous man noticed you for one afternoon, you are suddenly strong. Clara's eyes burned. No, she said. I think I was strong before. I just never said it out loud. Then she ended the call. For a few seconds, Clara stared at the screen. Her entire body trembled. I shouldn't have done that. Katerina stood. You should have done it years ago. Luca opened the door. Cars are ready. Clara looked at Silvio. He offered. His hand, not his arm, his hand. This time she did not hesitate as long. When her fingers met his, Silvio Moretti looked at her as if the whole afternoon had led to that one choice. Let's go get your father's book, he said. The Whitmore house sat behind black gates in Westchester, white and perfect and cold. Clara had grown up in that house, but as the cars rolled up the long driveway, it seemed less like home and more like a beautiful place where her voice had been buried. The porch lights were already on. Eleanor Whitmore stood at the top of the steps in a navy dress and pearls, her posture straight enough to cut glass. Helena stood beside her, still in blue satin, still beautiful, still furious. A housekeeper hovered behind them, pale and nervous. 3 black Moretti cars stopped in front of the house. Silvio stepped out first, then Clara. Her mother's eyes went directly to their joined hands. Clara let go quickly. Silvio noticed. So did Helena. Eleanor's voice was ice. Clara. Inside. Now. There was a time when those 3 words would have moved Clara's feet before thought could catch up. Not tonight. I need Father's library. Eleanor's eyes flicked to Silvio. This is not a suitable time. A man tried to kill someone today, Clara said. I think suitable passed hours ago. Helena let out a sharp laugh. Listen. To you. Clara turned toward her. For once, she did not shrink. Helena's smile faded. Silvio spoke quietly. Open the door, Mrs. Whitmore. Eleanor lifted her chin. You do not command my house. Katerina emerged from the second car, leaning on her cane. No, she said, but I do, when your house appears connected to a man who pointed a gun at my son. Eleanor's face drained of color. Clara looked at her mother. You knew the letters mattered. Eleanor's lips pressed together. You knew Father was trying to tell me something. Your father is confused. Then why are you afraid? The question landed softly. But it landed. Helena stepped forward. Enough. You always do this, Clara. You take one tiny thing and turn it into a tragedy because it makes you feel important. Silvio's voice dropped. Do not speak to her that way. Helena's eyes flashed. You don't know her. Silvio looked at Clara. No, he said, but I am beginning to. For some reason, that hurt Helena more than an insult would have. Eleanor stepped aside. Fine, she said. Search the library, then leave. The library door had been locked for months. Clara knew because she had tried it often. Her father's favorite room had become a forbidden place after his stroke. Eleanor claimed the dust was bad for her allergies. Helena said the room was depressing, but Clara had always suspected the truth was simpler. The room belonged too much to him. It resisted being turned into something elegant. When Eleanor unlocked the door, the smell of old paper and leather rushed out. Clara almost cried. Her father's reading chair still sat near the window. His brass lamp remained on the desk. A blanket Clara had knitted years ago lay folded over the armrest. On the wall above the fireplace hung a portrait of Thomas Whitmore, her grandfather, eyes calm, mouth serious, hands folded over a cane. Silvio entered behind Clara but stayed silent. He seemed to understand this was not just a search. It was grief. Clara moved toward the shelves. Blue spine. There were many books, but only a few blue ones. Some were navy, some faded, some almost gray. With age, Helena hovered at the doorway. Too tense, too watchful. Clara saw it. This time she trusted what she saw. She reached for a faded blue volume with no title. Helena stepped forward quickly. That's just an old accounting book. Clara's hand stopped on the spine. Silvio turned. Luca moved slightly toward Helena. Clara pulled the book free. It was heavier than it should have been. Her hand shook as she opened it. The pages had been cut into a hidden compartment. Inside lay 3 things: a black ledger, a small brass key, and an old photograph. Clara picked up the photograph first. 4 men stood outside a stone church under the Sicilian sun. One of them was Thomas Whitmore, younger but unmistakable. Another was Antonio Moretti. On the back, in her grandfather's handwriting, were the words, "The debt is not money. The debt is blood. Protect the quiet ones. They see what the powerful miss." Clara's vision blurred. Silvio took the ledger with gloved hands. Luca opened it under the desk lamp. His expression changed immediately. "Names," he said. "Payments, shipping routes, police contacts, judges, Rossetti accounts." Caterina whispered. Antonio trusted Thomas with everything. Eleanor sat down suddenly, as if her legs had failed. Clara stared at her mother. "You knew." Eleanor's voice was thin. "I knew your father kept nonsense." "No," Clara said. "You knew it was important." Helena snapped. "It was supposed to be gone." The room stopped. Eleanor turned toward her sharply. "Helena." Clara's heart turned cold. "What did you do?" Helena's face changed. For the first time that day, beauty failed her. Without control, without lighting, without applause, she looked frightened and young and cruel. "I did what I had to do." Silvio's voice was lethal. "Explain." Helena looked at him, then at Clara. "I was supposed to marry well," she said, voice shaking. "That was the plan. That has always been the plan. Mother said if I married into power, Father's debts would disappear, the house would be safe, everything would be fixed." Clara whispered, "Father has debts?" Eleanor closed her eyes. Helena laughed bitterly. "Of course you didn't know. You were too busy reading to him and playing nurse while the rest of us tried to keep this family from collapsing." Clara took a step back. Silvio moved closer, not touching her, but near enough to steady the air. Helena continued. "Richard Bellamy said the ledger was valuable. He said certain people would pay enough for it to save us. I didn't know he would send someone with a gun." Caterina's face hardened. "But you knew he planned something today." Helena's silence answered. Clara's voice was barely there. "You knew there would be danger." "I knew there would be a scene," Helena snapped. "A scare. Something to make Moretti cancel the selection, that's all. And I was standing there." "It wasn't about you." Clara flinched. Helena's eyes filled with angry tears. "That's the whole problem, Clara. Nothing was ever about you. You were supposed to stay where you always stay, in the background." The cruelty was so honest it became almost clean. Clara looked at her sister for a long moment. Then she said, "I know." Helena blinked. Clara's voice trembled but did not break. "That is why he saw me. Because for once I was standing exactly where all of you put me, out of the way, watching everything." Silvio looked at her. Pride moved across his face, quiet and unmistakable. Helena saw it and hated it. Before anyone could speak, a crash sounded from the back of the house. The housekeeper screamed. Luca drew his weapon. Silvio pulled Clara behind him. Another crash. Then footsteps. Heavy. Fast. A man appeared in the library doorway, sweating, wild-eyed, holding a pistol in one hand and the housekeeper's arm in the other. Richard Bellamy. His hair was disheveled, his expensive suit torn at the shoulder, his face twisted with desperation. "Give me the ledger," he shouted. Helena gasped. "Richard?" He looked at her with disgust. "You stupid girl, you said it would be easy." Clara felt Helena's shock beside her. So Helena had been used too. That did not erase what she had done, but it made the wound more complicated. Silvio stepped forward. "Let her go." Richard pressed the pistol against the housekeeper's side. "I walk out with the ledger, or she dies." The housekeeper sobbed. Clara knew her, Mrs. Alvarez. She had worked for the family since Clara was 12. She had slipped cookies into Clara's school bag when Eleanor forgot lunch. She had hugged Clara in the laundry room the night Helena's engagement party had been announced, and Clara had been asked to stay upstairs so there would be more room for guests. Clara stepped out from behind Silvio. "I'll bring it." Silvio's head turned sharply. "Clara." She did not look at him. If she did, she would stop. She took the ledger from Luca's hand. Richard's eyes lit with greed. "That's right." Slowly. Clara walked forward. Her hand shook. Her heart hammered. But her eyes remained on Mrs. Alvarez. The older woman's face was wet with tears. Clara spoke softly. "Mrs. Alvarez, when I drop, you drop." Richard frowned. "What?" Clara threw the ledger upward, not toward Richard, toward Helena. Helena caught it on instinct. Richard's gun swung toward Helena. Mrs. Alvarez dropped. Silvio moved. The sound that followed was not a gunshot. It was Silvio's body hitting Richard's with enough force to slam him into the bookcase. Luca seized the pistol. Richard cursed, struggled, and then went still as Silvio twisted his arm behind his back with terrifying calm. Helena stood frozen, holding the ledger like it had burned her hands. Clara rushed to Mrs. Alvarez and pulled her away. "Are you hurt?" The woman shook her head, crying, "No, miss, no." Silvio looked at Clara across the room. There was anger in his eyes, fear too, not fear of Richard, fear for her. "You could have been killed," he said. Clara was shaking now, the courage draining out as quickly as it had come. "So could she." Silvio stared at her. Then his expression changed. Not approval, not frustration. Understanding. This was who Clara was. Not weak, not invisible, not background. A woman who moved when others froze. A woman who protected even while bleeding. A woman her family had mistaken for small because she had never used her strength to make them feel small. Richard was dragged out. Helena sank into a chair, still clutching the ledger. Eleanor stood in the center of the library, staring at Clara, as if she had never seen her before. For one fragile second, Clara hoped her mother might say something real. "I'm sorry." "Are you hurt?" "I was wrong." Instead, Eleanor whispered, "What have you done to this family?" The old Clara would have collapsed under that question. The new Clara only looked tired. "I saved what was left of it." Then she turned away. Silvio followed her into the hallway. "Clara." She stopped near the staircase. The house was suddenly too full of memories. Helena laughing under chandeliers. Eleanor correcting Clara's dress. Her father calling her little bird from his chair. Years of being useful, quiet, grateful, unseen. It all pressed against her at once. "I don't want to be here," she whispered. Silvio's voice was low. "Then you do not have to be." She laughed weakly. "You make everything sound simple." "No, I make it clear. Simple is rare." She looked at him. The feared Mafia Boss. The man every beautiful woman had tried to win. The man who had rejected polished perfection and chosen the woman by the column. "Why me?" she asked. The question broke out of her, before pride could stop it. Silvio did not answer quickly. That mattered. He did not say because you are different. He did not say because you saved my life. He did not give her a line meant for romance. He looked at her as if the truth deserved time. "Because every person on that rooftop wanted to be chosen," he said. "Except you." Clara's throat tightened. "You were the only one who came with no performance, no demand, no mask. You listened when others posed. You noticed when others smiled. And when danger came, you moved before fear could make you selfish." His voice softened. "I have spent my life surrounded by people who shine under chandeliers and disappear in storms. You were the opposite." Clara looked away, tears burning. "I don't know how to be chosen." Silvio stepped closer. "Then we start slowly." She looked back at him. He held out his hand. Not to claim her, not to display her, to give her a choice. "You come to dinner tomorrow," he said. "No selection, no audience, no family deciding your worth. Just dinner." Clara stared at his hand. For 31 years, every path had been chosen for her. Helena's path first, her mother's reputation second, her father's care third, Clara's life last. This was only dinner. But it felt like the first door she had ever opened herself. She placed her hand in his. "Yes," she said. Silvio's fingers closed around hers. And behind them, in the ruined library of the Whitmore house, Helena watched her invisible sister become impossible to ignore. By morning, New York knew 3 things. A gunman had attacked the Moretti selection. Silvio Moretti had rejected every beautiful woman invited for him. And Clara Whitmore, the quiet sister nobody had considered, had left the event under his protection. By noon, society had made up its own story. Some said Silvio had chosen Clara out of gratitude. Some said she had manipulated the chaos. Some said Helena Whitmore had been publicly humiliated by a sister who had always envied her. Some said Clara was plain, strange, unstable, too quiet, too old to be naive, and too ordinary to be interesting. Silvio read every headline without expression. Then he placed the tablet on his desk. No. Luca, standing near the window, looked over. No what? No one gets to turn her into a rumor. Katerina smiled from the armchair. Finally, something sensible. Luca crossed his arms. What do you want to do? Silvio looked toward the garden, where Clara sat alone under the morning sun with her grandfather's letters in her lap. She was not crying. That would have been easier. She was simply sitting very still, the way people sit when they have been strong too long and no one has told them they can stop. Silvio's voice was quiet. A reception tonight. Luca lifted an eyebrow. After yesterday? Because of yesterday. Katerina's smile widened. Good, she said. Let them come dressed in judgment. We will serve them truth. That evening, the Bella Vista ballroom filled again. This time, no rooftop sunlight softened the cruelty. Crystal chandeliers burned overhead. Cameras flashed near the entrance. Women whispered behind gloved hands. Men pretended not to be eager for scandal. Every family from the selection returned. Except the Bellamys. Their absence spoke loudly. Helena arrived with Eleanor, dressed in silver, beautiful enough to make people turn and wounded enough to make them stare. Her chin remained high, but her eyes searched the room with a desperation Clara recognized. For once, Helena was afraid of being judged. Clara almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then she remembered the gunman, the ledger, Mrs. Alvarez shaking, on the library floor. Sympathy had limits now. Clara stood in a side room wearing a deep green dress Katerina had chosen. It was simple, elegant, and soft against her skin. It did not try to make her look like Helena. That was why she loved it. For the first time, Clara looked in the mirror and did not see a failed version of her sister. She saw herself. Katerina stood behind her. "Better," the older woman said. Clara touched the sleeve. "Better than what?" "Better than apologizing for having shoulders." Clara laughed softly. Then the nerves returned. "What if they laugh?" "They will." Clara turned. Katerina shrugged. "People laugh when their place in the world feels threatened. It is one of the least attractive sounds humans make. That is not comforting. It was not meant to be. Comfort is often dishonest. I prefer preparation." Clara looked back at the mirror. "What if I cannot do this?" Katerina's expression softened. "Then you stand beside my son until you remember that you already have." A knock came. Silvio entered. He stopped when he saw her. Not dramatically. Not like a man in a cheap romance novel. He simply stopped. And Clara, who had watched Helena receive compliments like flowers her whole life, suddenly understood that being truly seen was quieter than applause. Silvio's gaze moved over her face, not her body, not the dress first. Her face. "Beautiful," he said. One word. No performance. Clara forgot how to breathe. Katerina rolled her eyes. He has his father's gift for speeches. Silvio ignored her and offered Clara his arm. "Ready?" "No." His mouth softened. "Good. That means you understand the room." She placed her hand on his sleeve. Together they entered the ballroom. The whispers began immediately. Clara heard pieces. "That's her. Helena's sister. Why would he choose? She looks different. Not beautiful like Helena." Silvio leaned closer. "Do you want me to remove anyone?" Clara almost smiled. "You cannot remove everyone. I can remove enough to improve the evening." This time she did smile. It helped. They walked to the center of the ballroom. Helena stood near the front with Eleanor. Clara felt her sister's eyes on her, sharp with humiliation, confusion, and something that might have been regret. Silvio lifted one hand. The room fell silent. No music, no whispers, no cameras clicking. Only Silvio Moretti beneath the chandelier, with Clara Whitmore beside him. "Yesterday," he began, "many families came to offer me beauty. A few women shifted. Beauty is not rare." The words landed like a slap wrapped in velvet. "Discipline is rare. Courage is rare. Honesty is rare. The ability to see danger while everyone else admires their reflection is rare." Clara stared at the floor, face hot. Silvio's hand covered hers lightly where it rested on his arm. Clara Whitmore did not come yesterday to be chosen. She came because her family taught her to be useful and invisible. They mistook her silence for weakness. "So did many of you." No one moved. Eleanor's face turned pale. Helena looked down. Silvio's voice grew colder. "She saved my life. Then she saved evidence that protected both our families. Then she saved a woman in her home from a man others invited through greed and pride." Helena flinched. "Let this be clear," Silvio said. "I did not choose Clara Whitmore because I pitied her. I did not choose her because chaos forced my hand. I did not choose her to insult another woman." He turned to Clara. The room disappeared. "I chose her because when every beautiful woman came forward asking to be seen, she stood in the shadows and saw everything." Clara's eyes filled. Silvio stepped back slightly, giving her room, not taking it. Then he asked, in front of everyone, "Clara, would you have dinner with me tomorrow?" Gasps moved through the room. Not an engagement, not a contract, not a possession, a question, a beginning, a choice. Clara looked at the crowd. Her mother's tight mouth, Helena's shining eyes, the women who had laughed, the men who had underestimated her. Then she looked at Silvio. A dangerous man, yes, but one who had asked, one who waited, one who never once told her she was too fragile for the truth. "Yes," Clara said. Her voice trembled, but it carried. "I would." For the first time since anyone had known him, Silvio Moretti smiled in public. Not much. Only enough for Clara to see. But the room saw what mattered. The Mafia Boss, who had rejected every beautiful woman, had not chosen the invisible sister by accident. He had chosen her in front of all of them. And Clara Whitmore, standing beneath the chandelier in a green dress, did not disappear. Not that night. Not ever again. Weeks later, people would still argue about why Silvio Moretti had chosen Clara. Some said it was strategy. Some said gratitude. Some said the old Whitmore-Moretti debt had forced his hand. They were all wrong. Silvio had chosen her because she was the first woman in years who had not tried to become what he wanted. Clara had chosen him because he was the first person in years who had not punished her for becoming herself. The Rossetti threat did not vanish. Helena's betrayal did not heal overnight. Eleanor did not suddenly learn how to be a mother without conditions. Life was not a fairy tale, and Clara was old enough to be grateful for that. Fairy tales ended when the woman was chosen. Real life began the next morning, when she had to choose herself again. And she did. She visited her father, with Silvio beside her, not because she needed permission, but because she wanted him there. She reclaimed the library. She protected her grandfather's letters. She sat in meetings with Luca and noticed details men twice her age missed. She learned which smiles meant danger, which apologies meant nothing, and which silences deserved to be broken. As for Helena, she came one afternoon to the Moretti garden wearing no diamonds and no perfect smile. "I was cruel to you," she said. Clara looked at her sister for a long time. "Yes." Helena flinched. "Do you hate me?" "Some days." Tears filled Helena's eyes. Clara did not rush to comfort her. That was new too. "But some days," Clara continued. "I remember we were both raised in the same cold house. You were taught to shine or be worthless. I was taught to disappear or be loved. Neither of us came out whole." Helena covered her mouth. "Can we ever be sisters?" Clara looked toward the roses, where Silvio stood at a distance, giving her privacy but not leaving her alone. "Maybe," Clara said, "but not if sister means I become your shadow again." Helena nodded through tears. "I don't want that." Clara hoped it was true. She no longer needed it to be. That was freedom. By the end of summer, the city had stopped calling her the invisible sister. They called her quiet, observant, dangerous in a gentle way. Silvio called her Clara. No title, no label, just her name, spoken as if it had always deserved weight. And sometimes, on bright afternoons, when they stood together on the Bella Vista rooftop, where everything had changed, Clara would look at the column where she had once tried to hide. Then she would look at Silvio. "You really rejected every beautiful woman that day," she said once. He looked amused. "I did. That was rude. They were lying. All of them? Most of them. And me?" He took her bandaged hand, though the cut had healed months ago. "You were the only one telling the truth before you opened your mouth." Clara smiled. Below them, New York glittered. Behind them, roses climbed the railing. Ahead of them, danger still waited, because Silvio Moretti's world would never be gentle. But Clara was no longer afraid of being seen. And Silvio, who had spent his life surrounded by beautiful masks, had finally found the woman who made silence feel honest. The invisible sister had stepped into the sunlight. This time, she stayed. The Whitmore house had never looked smaller to Clara than it did from the back seat of Silvio Moretti's car. For years, she had thought of it as too large, too cold, too full of locked rooms and polished surfaces. A house, where footsteps echoed, where her mother's voice carried through halls, where Helena's laughter floated down staircases like music everyone was expected to admire. But now, after leaving the Bella Vista Hotel with armed men in black cars behind her, After watching a gunman look directly at her as though she were part of a secret she did not know, Clara saw the house differently. It was not grand. It was frightened. Every window glowed, but the curtains were drawn too tightly. The porch lights were on, but the gate had been left unlocked. Even from the driveway, Clara could see her mother standing at the front door in a navy dress and pearls, dressed as if proper clothing could hold a scandal back. Helena stood beside her, still beautiful, still in the pale blue satin dress she had worn to be chosen. But the confidence was gone from her face. When Silvio's car stopped, Clara reached for the door before the driver could open it. Silvio's hand closed gently around her wrist, not to stop her, to make her pause. "Breathe first," he said. Clara looked down at his hand. He released her immediately. "I'm not fragile," she said, though her voice shook. "No," Silvio answered. "That is why I reminded you to breathe instead of telling you to stay in the car." That quiet distinction unsettled her more than any compliment could have. She took one breath, then another. The driver opened the door. Clara stepped out into the evening air. Her mother's eyes went straight to the bandage on Clara's hand, then just as quickly to Silvio standing beside her. Not concern. Calculation. Clara felt the old ache rise inside her. Even now, after gunfire, after blood, after danger, Eleanor Whitmore was thinking about appearances. "Clara," her mother said sharply. "Inside, now." There it was, the voice that had trained Clara's body for 31 years. "Come here, stand there, don't speak, smile, change your shoes, fix Helena's hem, don't embarrass us." Clara's feet almost moved. Almost. Then Silvio stepped out of the car behind her, tall and silent, and suddenly the old command did not fill the whole world anymore. "I need Father's library," Clara said. Eleanor's face tightened. "Your Father's library is closed. It's a room, Mother. Not a grave." Helena flinched. Eleanor's eyes flashed. "Do not speak to me that way in front of guests." Caterina Moretti emerged from the second car with her cane in hand and diamonds at her throat. "My dear," Caterina said, "when a family's response to attempted murder is concern over tone, the guests become less of a problem than the parenting." Eleanor turned pale. Helena stared at Caterina as if no older woman had ever spoken to her without admiration. Silvio's second-in-command, Luca Romano, moved quietly toward the side entrance, already scanning the house, the windows, the tree line. 2 Moretti guards remained near the cars. They did not look dramatic. They looked efficient. That frightened Clara's mother more than if they had looked violent. "This is a private family matter," Eleanor said. Silvio's voice was calm. "A forged badge used at my event was connected to Whitmore Holdings. That makes it my matter." Eleanor's mouth opened, then closed. Clara looked at Helena. "Did you know?" Helena's eyes hardened. "Know what?" "The man who fired the gun looked at me and said I should ask my family. That man was trying to confuse you. You sound very sure of that." Helena laughed once. It was brittle, not beautiful. "Listen to yourself. One afternoon with him and now you're interrogating your own family?" Clara felt the old shame tug at her. The feeling that she was being dramatic. The feeling that she had misunderstood. The feeling that if she pushed too hard, everyone would turn cold and leave her alone with guilt. Then she remembered the gunman's eyes, the gloves, the false badge. The way Helena had gone silent on the phone when Clara mentioned the blue-spined book. She lifted her chin. "Open the library." Eleanor's expression turned dangerous. "No." Silvio did not move, but the air around him changed. Caterina tapped her cane once on the stone step. "Eleanor," she said, no warmth left in her voice. "I knew women like you when I was young. Women who confused control with dignity because no one had ever loved them without conditions. Do not mistake my age for patience. Open the library." For a moment, no one breathed. Then Eleanor stepped aside. The house swallowed them in silence. Inside, everything looked exactly as Clara remembered. The marble entryway, the silver mirror, the tall vase filled with white lilies because Eleanor believed colorful flowers looked emotional. The staircase where Clara had once sat as a child while Helena practiced introductions for guests. This is my older daughter, Helena. She sings, dances, speaks French, and this is Clara. Just Clara, always an afterthought. They walked down the hallway to the library. The door was locked. Eleanor removed a key from a drawer with fingers that shook only slightly. Clara noticed. So did Silvio. When the door opened, the smell hit Clara first. Old paper, leather, cedar, dust, her father. Her eyes filled before she could stop them. The library had been Henry Whitmore's favorite room before the stroke. He used to sit by the window in a green chair, reading shipping ledgers and old history books, sometimes calling Clara in to show her a line from a letter or a map of Sicily. People leave themselves behind in paper, he had told her once. Learn to read what they meant, not only what they wrote. Clara had been 12. She had not known then that her father was giving her the only inheritance no one could steal. The room had been untouched for months. Her father's brass lamp sat on the desk. His reading glasses were still folded beside an old bookmark. A blanket Clara had knitted lay across the chair. Helena hovered at the doorway as if the room itself might accuse her. Silvio remained beside Clara, quiet. He did not rush her. That mattered. Clara wiped her eyes with the back of her uninjured hand and walked to the shelves. Blue spine. Not Helena. You. There were hundreds of books. Brown leather, red cloth, black ledgers, faded green atlases, a few blue volumes scattered among them like hidden clues. Clara began at the shelf near her father's chair. Her fingers moved slowly over the spines. Clara, Eleanor said from behind her, voice tight. This is unnecessary. Your father said many strange things after the stroke. Clara did not turn. He said my name clearly enough. Helena stepped inside. That could mean anything. Clara's hand stopped on a faded navy book with no title. Helena moved too quickly. That one is just an old account register. The room changed. Silvio turned toward Helena. Luca, who had been checking the window latch, stopped. Katerina's eyes narrowed. Clara looked at her sister. How do you know? Helena's face went blank for half a second, then she smiled. Too late. I helped Mother organize the room. No, you didn't, Clara said softly. You hated this room. Helena's smile disappeared. Clara pulled the blue book from the shelf. It was heavier than a book that size should have been. Her pulse hammered. She carried it to the desk and opened it. The pages inside had been cut into a hollow square. In that hollow lay 3 things: a small brass key, a black ledger, and a photograph. Clara picked up the photograph first. 4 men stood outside a stone church in bright Sicilian sunlight. One was her grandfather, Thomas Whitmore, younger and thinner than in the portrait above the fireplace. One was Antonio Moretti, Silvio's father, his arm in a sling, his face half-shadowed. On the back, written in her grandfather's careful hand, were the words, "The debt was never money. The debt was blood. Protect the quiet ones. They see what the powerful miss." Clara's throat closed. She handed the photograph to Katerina. The older woman took it as if accepting something sacred. For a moment, Katerina Moretti looked not like a mafia matriarch, but like a widow seeing a ghost. "Antonio," she whispered. Silvio took the ledger from the hidden compartment and passed it to Luca. Luca opened it under the desk lamp. His face hardened. Names, dates, payments, judges, police captains, shipping routes, Rossetti accounts. He turned another page. This is not just history. Some of these names connect to people still alive. Eleanor sat down suddenly in Henry's chair. Clara stared at her. You knew. Eleanor's mouth tightened. I knew your father kept old nonsense. No, Clara said. You knew enough to lock the room. Helena snapped, because father was obsessed with the past. Clara turned to her. And you were obsessed with selling it? Helena went pale. The silence answered before she did. Eleanor whispered, Helena. Katerina stood very still. Silvio's voice was low. Explain. Helena looked at him, then at Clara, then at the ledger in Luca's hands. For the first time in Clara's life, her sister looked trapped without knowing how to make beauty save her. I didn't know there would be a gun, Helena said. Clara's heart dropped. Eleanor closed her eyes. Silvio stepped forward once. Helena hurried on, the words spilling faster now. Richard Bellamy said the ledger was valuable. He said old enemies of the Morettis would pay enough to save Whitmore Holdings and keep the house. He said all we had to do was find it. Clara's voice was faint. And today, Helena's eyes filled with angry tears. He said if something happened at the selection, it would distract everyone. He said Mr. Moretti would cancel the whole thing, the guests would scatter, and we could get what we needed without anyone noticing. Something, Clara repeated. Helena looked away. Did you know he would bring a weapon? No. Did you know people might be hurt? Helena's jaw trembled. I thought it would be a scene, a scare. A scare, Clara whispered, with me standing there. It wasn't about you, Helena shouted. The words struck the room like a slap. Clara did not flinch this time. She only looked at her sister with terrible calm. That has always been the problem, hasn't it? Helena froze. Clara continued, voice shaking but clear. Nothing was ever about me. My birthdays were scheduled around your rehearsals. My dresses were chosen so they wouldn't compete with yours. My college plans were changed because Mother needed me close when Father got sick. I was allowed to exist only where I was useful. Her eyes filled. But today, for once, I was exactly where all of you put me, in the background, watching. And because of that, I saw what none of you cared to see. Helena stared at her. Eleanor's face twisted. Clara, enough. No, Clara said. The word surprised everyone, most of all herself. No, Mother, not enough, not anymore. Silvio looked at her then, and Clara saw something in his eyes that made her stand straighter. Not pity. Pride. Before anyone could speak, glass shattered at the back of the house. Mrs. Alvarez, the housekeeper, screamed. Luca drew his weapon. Silvio seized Clara's arm and pulled her behind him. Another crash echoed through the hallway. A man's voice shouted, "Where is it?" Helena gasped. "Richard!" Richard Bellamy appeared in the library doorway with wild eyes and sweat darkening his collar. His expensive suit was torn at the shoulder. One hand held a pistol. The other gripped Mrs. Alvarez by the arm. The elderly housekeeper was shaking, her gray hair coming loose from its bun. Clara's blood went cold. Mrs. Alvarez had worked in the Whitmore house since Clara was 12. She had been the one to leave soup outside Clara's door after Eleanor forgot Clara had the flu. She had once ironed Clara's plain black dress for Helena's engagement party and whispered, "You look lovely too, miss." As if she knew no one else would say it. Richard shoved the housekeeper forward. "Give me the ledger." Silvio stepped in front of Clara. "Release her." Richard laughed, but fear cracked the sound. "You don't give orders here, Moretti." Silvio's face remained calm. That was the most frightening thing about him. "Yes," he said. "I do." Richard's hand shook around the pistol. "Rossetti will kill me if I don't bring it." "And what do you think I will do if you hurt her?" Silvio asked. Richard pressed the gun closer to Mrs. Alvarez. "Clara brings it to me, no one else." Silvio did not turn. No. Clara looked at Mrs. Alvarez's terrified face, then at Helena, who was crying now, but not moving, at Eleanor, frozen in her chair. At Luca, waiting for a clean shot he did not have. At Silvio, whose entire body stood between Clara and danger. For the second time that day, Clara understood something before anyone else moved. Richard did not want to shoot Mrs. Alvarez. He wanted everyone to believe he would. That made him dangerous, but not steady. Clara stepped out from behind Silvio. "Clara," he said sharply. She did not look at him. If she looked, she might become afraid enough to stop. "Let her go," Clara said to Richard, "and I'll give you the ledger." Richard's eyes brightened. Slowly, Luca held the ledger. Clara reached for it. For a moment, Luca did not release it. Then Silvio gave the smallest nod. Luca handed it to her. The ledger felt heavier than it looked. History, blood, debt, betrayal. All of it sitting in Clara's hands. She walked toward Richard. 1 step. 2, 3. Her palms were slick. Her bandage throbbed. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Mrs. Alvarez looked at her and shook her head, silently begging her not to risk herself. Clara's voice was soft. "Mrs. Alvarez, when I drop, you drop." Richard frowned. "What?" Clara threw the ledger upward, not at Richard, toward Helena. For all her flaws, Helena had perfect reflexes from years of catching bouquets, gifts, applause, and attention. She caught the ledger automatically. Richard's eyes snapped toward it. His gun followed. Mrs. Alvarez dropped to the floor. Silvio moved. He crossed the distance like a storm. His shoulder slammed into Richard before the man could correct his aim. The pistol went off, firing into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. Eleanor screamed. Helena clutched the ledger to her chest and fell back against the shelf. Luca kicked the gun away as Silvio drove Richard into the wall. Books shook loose and crashed to the floor. Richard groaned, pinned by Silvio's forearm, against his throat. Silvio's voice was almost gentle. "You pointed a gun at her," Richard choked. "I didn't—" "At her," Silvio repeated. Luca pulled Silvio back before rage turned into something permanent. Moretti guards flooded the room and dragged Richard away, bleeding and cursing. Clara knelt beside Mrs. Alvarez. "Are you hurt?" The older woman shook her head, sobbing. "No, miss. No, you saved me." Clara touched her shoulder gently. Only then did she realize she was shaking. Violently. Silvio came to her but stopped before touching her. His hands were still clenched. "May I?" he asked. In the middle of the ruined library, with plaster on his black suit and blood at his knuckles, he asked permission. Clara nodded. Silvio knelt and pulled her into his arms, not to display her, not to claim her, to hold her together when the courage left. Clara pressed her face against his shoulder and finally let herself tremble. "I'm so tired," she whispered. His hand moved, carefully over her hair. "I know." That was all. No promise that everything was over. No lie that she was safe forever. No grand speech about strength. Just "I know." And somehow, that was enough. Across the room, Helena stood holding the ledger, tears running down her perfect face. For once, no one was looking at her. Or rather, they were looking at her clearly. Not as the beautiful daughter, not as the prize. As a woman who had made a choice and was now meeting its cost. She walked slowly toward Clara. Silvio's arms tightened slightly, but Clara pulled back. Helena held out the ledger. "I didn't know," she whispered. Clara looked at her sister's shaking hands. "No," Clara said. "You didn't want to know." Helena flinched. Eleanor rose from the chair. "Clara, this family has been under terrible pressure. Your sister made a mistake." Clara turned toward her mother. Something in her face made Eleanor stop. "A mistake is forgetting my birthday," Clara said. "A mistake is calling me sensitive when I cry. A mistake is asking me to stay upstairs because your guests might ask why I wasn't married yet." Her voice trembled. This was not a mistake. This was what happens when you teach one daughter she must shine at any cost and the other that she must disappear at any cost. Eleanor's mouth opened. No words came. For the first time in Clara's memory, her mother had no correction ready. Katerina stepped beside Clara. "Your daughter needs distance from this house," she said. Eleanor stiffened. "She is my daughter." Katerina's eyes were cold. "Then you should have noticed she was bleeding before my son did." The sentence landed like a final judgment. Clara closed her eyes. Then she opened them and looked at Silvio. "I want to see my father." Silvio nodded once. "Then we go." No one tried to stop them. The care facility was quiet when they arrived, the hallway lights dimmed for night. Clara had come here so many times alone that walking beside Silvio felt strange. Wrong at first. Then, slowly, not wrong. Her father's room smelled faintly, of lavender soap and medicine. Henry Whitmore lay near the window, thinner than Silvio expected, his silver hair combed neatly, his hands resting on the blanket. His eyes opened when Clara entered. "Little bird," he whispered. Clara crossed the room quickly and took his hand. "I found it, Dad." A faint smile touched his mouth. "I knew you would." Her tears spilled over. "Why didn't you tell me clearly?" His gaze moved past her to Silvio. For a moment his clouded eyes became sharper. "Antonio's boy." Silvio went still. "You knew?" Henry's breathing was uneven, but his voice carried memory. "My father said the Morettis would come one day. Said not to give the book to Helena, not to Eleanor. Clara sees what others miss." Clara pressed his hand to her cheek. "Dad." Henry looked at Silvio. They made her small. Silvio's jaw tightened. Henry's eyes filled with pain. "I let them." Clara shook her head. "No." "Yes," her father whispered. "I was ill, but before that too, I saw. I did not—" "Stop it enough." Those words pierced Clara more deeply than any apology she had imagined. Because they were true. And because he had said them. Henry lifted his trembling hand toward Silvio. "Do not make her your shadow, too." Silvio took the older man's hand carefully. "I won't. Do not protect her by hiding her. I won't. Ask." Silvio looked at Clara, then back at Henry. "I will." Clara cried then, not quietly, not prettily. She cried like a woman who had been strong in small rooms for too many years. Silvio stepped back to give her privacy. Henry stopped him with surprising strength. "Stay," he whispered. "She has spent too much life crying alone." So Silvio stayed. By morning, the city had turned Clara into a story. A gunman at the Moretti selection, a hidden ledger, a betrayed beauty, a quiet sister chosen by the most dangerous man in New York. Every gossip page had a different version. Some called Clara lucky. Some called her manipulative. Some said Silvio had chosen her only because she saved him. Some said Helena had been humiliated by pity. Silvio read the headlines in his study, while Luca stood by the window and Katerina drank espresso as if the world had not nearly collapsed twice in 24 hours. Silvio placed the tablet face down on the desk. "No." Luca glanced over. "No what?" "No one turns her into a rumor." Katerina smiled. "Finally, a sensible sentence." Luca folded his arms. "What do you want to do?" Silvio looked through the glass doors into the garden. Clara sat on a bench in the morning sun, her grandfather's letters in her lap. She was not crying now. She was simply very still, like a person learning the shape of a new life and not yet trusting its edges. "A reception tonight," Silvio said. Luca raised an eyebrow. "After yesterday?" "Because of yesterday." Katerina set down her cup. "Good. Let them come dressed in judgment. We will serve them truth." When Clara heard the plan, she stared at Silvio as if he had suggested lighting himself on fire for warmth. No. Silvio watched her from across the garden. You said that very clearly. I meant it very clearly. You do not want to attend? I do not want to be displayed. You will not be displayed. What do you call putting me in a ballroom full of people who spent yesterday laughing at me? Correcting. The record. Clara stood, anger rising because fear needed somewhere to go. I am not a record. No, Silvio said. You are a woman they are trying to turn into a lie. She stopped. He stepped closer, careful as always not to crowd her. Yesterday, I chose you in chaos. They will tell themselves it was gratitude, pity, confusion, shock. Tonight, I choose you calmly. Publicly. With no gunfire, no panic, and no one able to claim I was forced by the moment. Clara's throat tightened. Why does that matter to you? His answer came quietly. Because you deserve to be chosen, in peace. The words went through her like light through a locked room. Clara looked away before he could see too much. You barely know me. I know enough to begin. What if you discover I am not what you think? Then I will learn who you are instead of punishing you for being human. No one had ever said anything like that to Clara. Not her mother. Not Helena. Not the men who had once smiled politely and then asked if her sister was single. She looked at him trying to find the trap. There was none. That frightened her most. All right, she whispered. Silvio's face did not change much, but his eyes did. That evening, Katerina sent 3 dresses to Clara's room. 1 silver, 1 black, 1 deep green. Clara chose the green before she knew why. It was not flashy. It did not try to make her look like Helena. It softened her shoulders, warmed her eyes, and moved around her body as if it had been made for her rather than a woman she was supposed to become. When she looked in the mirror, she did not see a beauty queen. She saw herself. That was more frightening. Katerina entered without knocking and stopped behind her. Good. Clara touched the sleeve. It's too expensive. So are most useful things. I'm not used to this. Being dressed well? Being considered? Katerina's expression changed. For a moment, the sharpness left her. Then she placed a hand on Clara's shoulder. Get used to it. A knock came at the door. Silvio entered. He stopped. Not dramatically, not like a man pretending to be stunned. He simply stopped moving, and Clara felt the stillness like a hand around her heart. His gaze found her face first. Not the dress, not the body her mother had taught her to apologize for. Her face. Beautiful, he said. 1 word. No performance. Clara forgot how to breathe. Katerina sighed. He has his father's talent. For speeches. Terrible, but sincere. Silvio ignored her and offered Clara his arm. Ready? No. His mouth softened. Good. That means you understand the room. She placed her hand on his sleeve. Together, they walked into the Bella Vista ballroom. The same families had returned. Of course they had. Scandal pulled society harder than loyalty ever could. Crystal chandeliers blazed overhead. White roses lined the walls. Cameras flashed at the entrance. Women whispered behind gloved hands. Men pretended they were there for business while leaning closer to hear gossip. Helena stood near the front in a silver dress, beautiful enough to make people look and pale enough to make them wonder. Eleanor stood beside her. When Clara entered on Silvio's arm, her mother's face tightened. Clara felt it. Then she kept walking. Whispers rose around her. That's her. Helena's sister. She looks different. Why would he choose her? She's not even... Silvio leaned closer. Do you want me to remove anyone? Clara almost laughed. You cannot remove everyone. I can remove enough to improve the evening. The laugh escaped before she could stop it. Several heads turned. For once, Clara did not lower her eyes. Silvio led her to the center of the ballroom beneath the chandelier. He lifted one hand. Silence fell instantly. That was power, Clara realized. Not shouting, not demanding. Being so certain of being heard that the room obeyed before the words arrived. Silvio looked over the crowd. "Yesterday," he said, "many families came to offer me beauty." The room tightened. Beauty is not rare. A ripple moved through. The women gathered near the front. Discipline is rare, courage is rare, honesty is rare. The ability to see danger while everyone else admires their reflection is rare. Clara stared at the marble floor, her face burning. Silvio's hand covered hers lightly where it rested on his arm. Clara Whitmore did not come yesterday to be chosen. She came because her family taught her to be useful and invisible. Eleanor flinched. Helena looked down. They mistook her silence for weakness. So did many of you. No one spoke. She saved my life. Then she saved evidence tied to a debt older than most names in this room. Then she saved an innocent woman in her home from a man invited through greed and pride. Helena's eyes filled. Silvio's voice grew colder. Let there be no misunderstanding. I did not choose Clara Whitmore because I pitied her. I did not choose her because chaos forced my hand. I did not choose her to insult another woman. He turned toward Clara. The ballroom disappeared at the edges. I chose her because when every beautiful woman came forward asking to be seen, she stood in the shadows and saw everything. Clara's eyes filled. Silvio stepped back slightly, not away, just enough to give her space. Then, in front of the entire room, he asked, "Clara, would you have dinner with me tomorrow?" Gasps moved through the ballroom. It was not a proposal, not a contract, not ownership, a question, a beginning, a choice. Clara looked around the room, at the women who had laughed, at the men who had dismissed her, at Helena, whose face was wet now, no longer perfect, at Eleanor, who looked angry and lost, as if the world had broken a rule by letting Clara matter. Then Clara looked at Silvio. A dangerous man, a patient man, a man who had power and still asked. "Yes," she said. Her voice trembled, but it carried. "I would." For the first time anyone in that room had seen, Silvio Moretti smiled in public. Not much, only enough for Clara to know it was real. But the room saw what mattered. The Mafia Boss who had rejected every beautiful woman had not chosen the invisible. Sister by accident, he had chosen her again, in peace, in public, with every eye watching, and Clara Whitmore did not disappear. Not that night, not ever again. Weeks later, people would still argue about why Silvio Moretti chose Clara. Some said it was strategy. Some said gratitude. Some said the old Whitmore debt forced his hand. Some said he wanted to punish Helena. They were all wrong. Silvio chose Clara because she was the first woman in years who had not tried to become what he wanted. Clara chose him because he was the first person in years who did not punish her for becoming herself. The Rossetti threat did not vanish overnight. Helena's betrayal did not heal in a week. Eleanor did not suddenly become the mother Clara had needed. Life was not a fairy tale, and Clara was old enough to be grateful for that. Fairy tales ended when a woman was chosen. Real life began the next morning, when she had to choose herself again, and Clara did. She visited her father with Silvio beside her, not because she needed permission, but because she wanted him there. She reclaimed the library. She protected her grandfather's letters. She sat in meetings with Luca and noticed details men twice her age missed. She learned which smiles meant danger, which apologies meant nothing, and which silences deserved to be broken. As for Helena, she came one afternoon to the Moretti garden wearing no diamonds and no perfect smile. Clara saw her from the rose path and almost turned away. Then she stopped. Running from Helena would still be letting Helena decide the shape of the room. So Clara waited. Helena approached slowly. "I was cruel to you," she said. Clara looked at her sister for a long time. "Yes," Helena flinched. "I don't know how to apologize correctly. Start by not making it about yourself." A small, painful laugh escaped Helena. "You really have changed." Clara shook her head. "No, I think I was always this person. You just never had to meet her." Tears filled Helena's eyes. "Do you hate me?" Clara looked toward the roses. "Some days." Helena's face crumpled. Clara did not rush to comfort her. That was new too. "But some days," Clara continued, "I remember we were both raised in the same cold house. You were taught to shine or be worthless. I was taught to disappear or be loved. Neither of us came out whole." Helena covered her mouth. "Can we ever be sisters?" Clara thought carefully. Once, she would have said yes just to stop Helena from crying. Now she respected them both too much to lie. "Maybe," Clara said, "but not if sister means I become your shadow again." Helena nodded through tears. "I don't want that." Clara hoped that was true. She no longer needed it to be. That was freedom. By the end of summer, the city had stopped calling her the invisible sister. They called her quiet, observant, dangerous in a gentle way. Silvio called her Clara. No title, no label, just her name, spoken as if it had always deserved weight. Sometimes, on bright afternoons, they returned to the Bella Vista rooftop where everything had changed. The fountain had been repaired. The roses had grown fuller. The column where Clara once tried to hide still stood near the terrace doors. One afternoon, Clara walked to it and placed her hand against the cool marble. Silvio watched her. "Do you hate this place?" he asked. Clara thought about it. No. No? It was the first place where being invisible saved someone. Silvio came to stand beside her, and the first place where I was seen. He reached for her hand, then paused as he always did. Still asking. Always asking. Clara placed her hand in his. The first time she had touched his sleeve, the terrace had gone silent with shock. This time no one noticed at first. That made it better. Not a spectacle, not a rescue, not a choice made to shame the women who had mocked her. Just Clara and Silvio, hand in hand beneath the daylight, choosing each other again in the ordinary quiet after the storm. Below them, New York glittered. Behind them, roses climbed the railing. Ahead of them, danger still waited, because Silvio, Moretti's world would never be gentle. But Clara was no longer afraid of being seen, and Silvio, who had spent his life surrounded by beautiful masks, had finally found the woman who made silence feel honest. The invisible sister had stepped into the sunlight. This time she stayed there,